So here is the onion, pepper, celery, carrot chopped mixture that I made the other day in the video up here. That I chopped up, put in baggies in a big Ziploc baggie and froze it. I'm now going to defrost it to put into meatballs that I'm going to pressure can. And I'm going to use the meat that I picked up yesterday in my grocery haul video up here. As you can see, I paid $3.90 a kilogram, which is like $1 something a pound. Crazy price. Each of these packages were about $2.68. So I'm going to do 6 of these packages. I'm going to put in a bowl here with 6 eggs. There's 1 package, 2 packages, 3, 4. I might just do 5, and then I'll just do 5 eggs. Because I think this packet, this bowl, is not big enough. And there's 5 eggs in there. And I'm going to put some garlic powder. We like lots of garlic, so I'm not really measuring. And instead of salt and pepper, I'm just going to use the keg steak spice because it has salt and pepper in it. But just be careful not to use too much, in case your family doesn't like lots of pepper. Normally, if I was making meatballs for the freezer, I would add oatmeal or breadcrumbs. Since I'm canning these are just going to be really meaty meatballs. Because I can't put bread or any type of binder in there from canning them. Some people do, but I'm not confident in that to do that myself, so. There, the rest of it from that bag out and stir. Spread that all around. Stir that in there. Actually, I might need some more veggies. While I'm waiting for the other package of veggies to defrost, I'm also going to add some dehydrated onions that I'm going to mix in here. I will mix this with my hands in a bit, I want to get that going. And there's the rest of the veggies. I'm going to spread everything this way. Even though I'm not using a filler like bread or oatmeal, I'm hiding veggies in my meatballs, which will also extend them and give everybody an extra dose of veggies, because we never can eat enough veggies in things. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time getting all my veggie allotment in every day, so if each meatball is almost like half veggie, half meat. And we're going to bake these in the oven, so we're not adding extra grease to them, for about 15-20 minutes until they're done. And then we will can them in beef broth. I picked up the beef bouillon broth mix, and going to use 1 tablespoon or 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon per cup of water. Now, I'm just going to mix this all up. It's nicely even distributed. I've washed my hands, and I will wash my hands afterwards as well. I just don't like wearing gloves. If I was doing it in a kitchen, a professional kitchen or a restaurant, of course I'd wear gloves. But this is my own kitchen. And I have just a sink just over there, and I wash as needed. So make sure it's the best way to make sure everything is all mixed and incorporated. Like there's still some bits of frozen veggies. But I find cooking very therapeutic. I tend to be easily distracted on things, but when I'm baking and cooking, I find it's very therapeutic and I can stay on task, and whatever stress or anxiety that I have, it gets released in my cooking. And my hands are nicely clean now. And I'm going to use a little ice cream or meat scoop or whatever and put them on my pan. So I have my lasagna pan here lined with this black grilling mat. You can also use a slip mat or parchment paper, or you can do grease or just put it on so that your meat doesn't stick. But and you don't really have to separate them too much because they won't expand. Like with oats and bread, they might expand a bit. And I'm not a perfectionist, so if you need them perfectly round, then by all means make them perfectly round for you. But I'm continuing to do them like this. So here they are. I'm going to cook them at 350 for about 15-20 minutes. And there's tray number 2, and there's still lots more. And there's a third tray, and there's still more. Here are the cooked meatballs. I'm just going to put them in a bowl and do more of them. And all this grease I just pour in there. I'll put that in the compost green bin because we don't need the extra fat. And this is from lean ground beef. Imagine if I was using regular medium. That's still a lot of fat. And there's the 6th tray of meatballs, and we're done. I still have 3 more packages of ground beef, which I'm just going to cook up to can. So I just put the meat in there with some steak spice and lots of garlic powder, and I'm going to put some dehydrated onions, and that's it. I'm going to mix this all up and then put it in a pan or in the oven for it to cook, and then I'll just break it apart once it's cooked. You know, I could do it in a fry pan and that too, but since I already have the oven going on, I may as well just use the heat from it. And I'll break it apart as it cooks, or afterwards. So this is my All-American 921 canner. I filled it with about 2 inches of water before you put your jars in. Now I'm going to put a bit of vinegar in the water because I'm canning meat, and it allows, if there's any grease that comes out, it won't really affect the jars and stuff, and keeps it clean and all that. Just I saw it as a recommendation, and I've been doing it ever since. Now I have a bit of olive oil, and I put it all around the rim here. The All-American canner does not have a rubber ring, a rubber gasket. So you have to put oil or Vaseline on here every so often. Not necessarily every time, but just because otherwise it might get too stuck when it pressures. So if I'm doing a bunch of canning, I will do it once every 3 or 4 times I'm canning. Then that way it gives it a nice lubricant seal. Yeah. Just put it all over. There we go. And since it's olive oil, if it gets in your food or whatever, it's olive oil. So now I'm just going to remove this out of the way. I'm going to be using the Burden 750 mils jars, wide mouth jars. So I have to process these at the quart timetables because there's not ones for this size. So if I was going to do pints or 500 mils, I would process them for 75 minutes. But since these are 750 mils, I'm going to process them for 90 minutes. So now I'm going to put my meatballs in the jars. So I filled them up loosely. I don't want to pack them down because I don't want to crush the actual balls. And now I'm putting a teaspoon of bouillon in each one. I don't have to. I could put tomato juice or just water, but I figured the beef bouillon will add a nice flavor. And then hot boiling water. And you just fill it up to the 1-inch headspace. Just fill up to the 1-inch headspace, which is this bottom line of the jars. You always test your jars, the rims, to make sure there is no cracks before you put the food in them. And then you take a chopstick or something to get out all the air bubbles. Make sure it all settles. Add any more water or broth as needed. Go down. That one needs a little bit more water. I think this one has a bit too much water. So I'm going to use my little teaspoon. Then I take a paper towel and I dip it in vinegar, because vinegar will cut the grease, and you ram it around the rim so that when you put your lids on, it can create a seal. Right there I have my new lids in a bowl of hot water. And then, not too hot. I try not to touch the rubber gasket. And then you put your rings on, just finger tight, not too tight because you don't want the lids to bulge, and not too loose because you want the lids to seal. You don't want it to siphon all the, let's go rinse that in here. Now that one, see, real videos is real time. Make mistakes. Usually I have this in a bit bigger bowl. I'm not so crowded because I'm also trying to make supper for this. 4 o'clock. So you put your hot jars into already hot water. There's a rack at the bottom. And you continue until you're done. And there's the jars in there. So there's 7 jars. You could fit 7 wide mouths. I think about 9 regular. And then you just put the lid in. You match up the arrow here to the line here, and you make sure that this is hooked onto down here. Then you do the opposite wing nut on either side, and you tighten it equally so that the lid lines up equally and stays flat. Now I'm going to raise my temperature of my stove. Make sure everything's tight. Okay, 9:21. So now I'm going to wait for it to steam here for 10 minutes, and then I'll put my 10-pound weighted gauge, because that's for my area of elevation. And once that goes on, it'll go up to the 10-pound pressure, and you'll see that. So this is the steam. It's very hot. You can see the little bubbles of water. Oops, hot. Don't touch the thing. That's steaming. So now I'm going to vent that for 10 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on. Set timer. Start. So it's going for 10 minutes. Once that is done, when it beeps, I am going to put the weighted gauge on the 10-pound mark and bring that up to speed. Once it starts jiggling, then I will start the timer for the 90 minutes. Now I put these are big on, and it will make a noise, and when it gets to 10-pound pressure. And if you see a little bit of water there, that's fine. This is it jiggling when it's hit 10-pound pressure. And look, it's at 10-pound pressure. You don't want it jiggling the whole time. So you lower the temp now, usually to the medium low, so that this will slow down and at least jiggle a couple of times a minute, like 6 times a minute or so. See, it stops, and then it jiggles. Now, I set the timer for 90 minutes. So 1 hour and 30 minutes. Lower the temperature a little bit. And that will slow down eventually. See, it stops, and then that'll jiggle again. That's what you want. That means it's keeping its pressure at 10 to 11 pounds mark. The timer is about to go off, and let's turn off the stove. And now I let this go down to 0 naturally before I take this off. So that should take about 10 minutes or so for the heat to go down. See, it turns it off. So it's down to 0. It's been down to 0 for a few minutes. You can still hear a little bit of the last tiny bit of pressure. And then you unlock these wing nuts just the same way you lock them up, one on each side. Then you twist so it unlocks there. Now it's unlocked. You lift away. Smells wonderful. So there's a bit of seepage in here, but not a lot, because they're still quite filled. Steaming. And then we take these out. And we always put them on a towel or a piece of cloth. Because we don't want thermal shock. Because if these went straight on your counter, especially if you have granite or something like that, the cold of the counter and the hot of the jars would be too much of a difference that the bottoms will just like crack off. And then you lose all that precious food you just canned. Look at the bubbles. Now, what you do is you go back and you, because these lids have now been loosened, you go back and you just finger tighten them. The heat loosen the metal and just dry off the lids. But look at this, beautiful. And that's how you can meatballs or ground beef. I've got the ground beef in here. I'm going to put hot broth in it and reprocess them. And continue to process them. So, isn't that beautiful? So this is how you can the meatballs. You make sure you use a jar lifter to get them out. Make sure that these now are just finger tight. Put them on a towel. Now we just let them sit for 24 hours. Then we will remove the ring and mark a date on it. Make sure we wipe it down because it's greasy, because see, some of the liquid seeped out, and that is perfectly normal because it's fatty. So, and that's it. You just wipe them down in 24 hours. Not right now, because the cold cloth will make them crack. And that's it. Take the rings off and put them away. Mark a date. And you're good to go. Please click like, share, and subscribe. And comment below. Here are the cooled down jars from yesterday. This bit is the fat. You can tell there's a bit more fat on the ground meat, even though I cooked it, than there were on the meatballs. And the meatballs fat is a bit orangier because of the vegetables that are in it. But this is how they look afterwards. They've lost some liquid but they are perfectly fine. I've called the Bernardin and Ball thing, and they say as long as there is a seal, which there is, you can hear it doesn't go down, they'll be perfectly fine. Sometimes there might be discoloration of any food above the liquid line, but that's about it. But most of them it's just a little bit, and you saw they were perfectly filled right to the line. Now I'm going to wash these jars off. We'll take off the rings, wash them, and put them away.